At nearly 10 p.m., I dragged my suitcase to my daughter's front door with exactly $43 left in my wallet. My son-in-law blocked the doorway, his voice ice cold. "This house isn't a hotel. You'd be better off going somewhere else." "Get lost, old man." My daughter stood behind him, but she couldn't even look me in the eyes. At 6 a.m. the next morning, a strange phone call woke me up. "He is a dying billionaire, and he has been searching for you for 10 years. From that moment on, my life turned in a completely different direction, and the people who thought they had buried me were about to learn I had only been waiting to rise. Thank you for being here. It means everything. Quick question before we dive in. What city or country are you joining from? Let me know in the comments. You'd be surprised how far this reaches. Note some elements of this story are fictional crafted to make the message land harder. The names and settings are coincidental, but the lesson underneath, that one's all yours to keep. $43. I counted a third time because the first two felt like a mistake I was too exhausted to accept. A 20, a 10, two fives, three singles. My fingers moved the way they used to move over blueprints, slow, deliberate checking every line twice. But blueprints could be corrected. $43 is just $43. I fold the bills back and look at Helen's photograph on the dashboard. She's laughing in the picture. No performance, no holding back, just Helen completely herself, the way she always was. I took that photo in 2004. She complained for a week that I'd caught her mid-bite. I told her it was the best photograph I'd ever taken in my life. "I still mean that. You're counting it again, aren't you?" her voice says in my head. Not a question. She always knew. Third time, I say out loud. And still 43. Well, I can almost hear the smile in it. At least you're consistent. Somewhere south of here, 3 buildings I designed are still standing. 38 years. Every line drawn by my hand, every calculation checked twice because I believed that if something was worth building, it deserved to be built right. My name is not on any of them anymore. I signed a document in March of 2022. Marcus had slid it across my kitchen table with that easy, practiced confidence, the kind that made asking questions feel like a waste of everyone's time. "Restructuring formality," he'd said. "Standard attribution cleanup for insurance compliance. Nothing changes." "Should I have my own attorney look at it?" I asked. He smiled, patient, slightly amused. "Carl already reviewed it." "You trust Carl, don't you?" Carl had been my attorney for 11 years. I trusted Carl completely. I signed. 2 minutes. 38 years handed over in 2 minutes, because my son-in-law told me my lawyer had already approved it, and I was trusting enough to believe that family didn't lie about things like that. "You weren't foolish," Helen says. "You were a father. That's different." "Is it really?" I ask. She doesn't answer. She never answers that one. My phone buzzes against the center console. 3% battery. I grab the cable and plug it in before it dies. 1 missed call, 1 text. Both 2 hours old. Number I don't recognize. I should ignore it. Whatever that message is, it almost certainly isn't good news. Good news stopped finding me a long time ago. But I tap it anyway. "My name is Dorothea Reyes. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Leonard Ashford. He says you'll know why. Please call back before 9 a.m. tomorrow. This is the last time he'll be able to wait." I read it 3 times. Leonard Ashford. I searched 38 years of memory, every client, every contractor, every handshake at every industry conference. Nothing. The name doesn't exist anywhere in my past. But that line, "He says you'll know why." Why does it feel like a door I've walked past 100 times without ever once stopping to look? I had knocked 3 times before the door opened, Marcus answered. He was dressed like a man who had just come from the office but hadn't quite decided to stop being impressive, yet jacket still on collar, open by 1 button. He looked at me, then at the single suitcase beside my feet, then back at me. His expression didn't change. That was the thing about Marcus Vane. His face never gave anything away for free. "Dad," he said it warmly. He always said everything warmly. This is a surprise. I need a place to stay, I said. A week, maybe 2. Just until I sort out the situation with the apartment. A pause. Brief, almost unnoticeable, but I noticed. After 38 years of reading structural stress points, I'd gotten very good at noticing the exact moment something was about to give. The thing is, Marcus said, we've got a pretty full house this week. Claire's college roommate is coming in from Seattle. We promised her the guest room months ago. I can take the couch. It's not really about the couch, Dad. It's the space, the timing. He spread his hands in that lawyer gesture, the one that said, I'm being completely reasonable, and you know it. I just don't think it works right now. I looked past his shoulder. Claire was standing at the end of the hallway, my daughter, 36 years old, and she still stood the same way she did when she was 8 and didn't want to tell me something. Weight shifted to one foot, arms slightly crossed. Lips pressed together in that careful line that meant she was holding words back. She met my eyes for exactly 1 second. Then she looked at the floor. That 1 second told me everything Marcus's smooth voice was designed to hide. Claire, I said. She didn't move. It's fine, I said quieter. Not to Marcus, to her. I just wanted to see you. She opened her mouth, closed it. Marcus shifted slightly in the doorway, not aggressive, just present, filling the space. We'll call you later this week, he said. Get dinner soon, okay? Catch up properly. I picked up my suitcase. Sure, I said. Dinner. I walked back to the Tahoe without turning around. Behind me, I heard the door close, soft, clean, final. The sound of a decision already made before I'd even knocked. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time without starting the engine. The silence in the car felt different from the silence outside it. Heavier, more honest. She didn't say a word, Helen would have said. No, I answered. She didn't. That's not nothing, you know. Silence like that, it's not emptiness, it's weight. I looked at my hands on the steering wheel. My daughter had stood 10 feet away from me and couldn't look me in the eyes for more than 1 second. I had been trying for months to tell myself that meant nothing. Sitting there, I finally stopped trying. The sign above the door read Callaway and Associates Design Group. 3 years ago, it had read Callaway and Stokes. My name had been Stokes. I pushed through the glass door with the cardboard box under my arm, the last of my personal items and things I hadn't bothered to collect when they'd cleared my office 18 months ago. A drafting compass. 2 reference books with my handwriting in the margins. A framed photo of the Portland building the week it opened. Small things. The kind of things that only matter to the person who owned them. The receptionist, young new, didn't know me, looked up. Can I help you? I'm just here to pick up a box from storage. Callaway said it was cleared. She checked her screen, nodded. Room 4B, down the hall, last left. I walked through the main studio. Heads down, everyone working. The drafting tables were the same ones I'd bought in 2003. The layout of the room, the way the workstations angled toward the north windows for natural light, that had been my idea in 1998 when we moved into this space. Nobody in this room knew that. Nobody needed to. I passed my old office. The corner room with the floor-to-ceiling windows. Someone had put a standing desk in the corner where my drawing table used to be. A jacket hung on the back of my old chair. I kept walking. In room 4B, I found my box on a metal shelf exactly where it had been left. I checked the contents quickly, everything there. I lifted it and turned to leave. That's when I saw her. A young woman stood in the doorway, maybe 27, holding a coffee mug with both hands, like she needed something to hold on to. She had the look of someone who had been working up the courage to say something for longer than the conversation had been happening. Mr. Stokes, she said, quietly, almost a whisper. I stopped. Yes, she opened her mouth. Her eyes went to the hallway behind her, quick, nervous, then back to me. She took one small step forward. Then her phone buzzed in her pocket. She flinched like it was a gunshot. Looked at the screen. Something shifted in her face, the courage draining out of it all at once. "Sorry," she said. "I thought you were someone else." She stepped aside and looked at the floor. I watched her for a moment. The way her knuckles had gone white around the mug. The way she was very carefully not looking at me. "It's fine," I said. I walked out through the main studio, through the glass door, and onto the sidewalk. I stood there for a moment and looked up at the building's entrance, the curved canopy, the precise angle of the overhang that directed rainwater exactly 12 inches from the door. I'd designed that detail in the fall of 1998 and argued for it for 2 weeks when the contractor said it was unnecessary. It still worked perfectly. Some things at least held their shape. I set the phone face up on the passenger seat and stared at the ceiling. "He says you'll know why." I said the name out loud just to hear it. Leonard Ashford. Nothing. No memory attached to it. No face, no handshake, no project. Just a name sitting in the dark like an object dropped in a room you've never been in. I picked up the phone and searched it. Forbes 2019 came up first. A profile photo, a headline: Leonard Ashford founder, Ashford Capital Group. Net worth estimated at $1.2 billion. The man in the photo was in his late 60s, lean with the kind of eyes that looked like they were always calculating something. Silver hair, dark suit, no smile. He looked like someone who had spent decades in rooms where smiling was optional. I didn't recognize him. I read the profile anyway. Real estate development, infrastructure investment. Midwest-based with national projects. The company had been founded in 2016. Before that, nothing. No prior business history listed, no earlier ventures, no professional background before the age of 58. That struck me as strange. Men like that don't appear from nowhere at 58. "What are you thinking?" Helen asks. "I'm thinking a man worth $1.2 billion doesn't have his assistant send a text at 9 o'clock at night to someone sleeping in a parking lot, unless he has a very specific reason. And I don't know what that reason is, which means either he has the wrong person, or there's something I don't know about my own life." The second option sat in my chest like cold water. Because in the last 3 years, I'd discovered that there were, in fact, quite a few things about my own life I hadn't known. My studio, my IP. My son-in-law's 5-year plan that I'd walked into like a man stepping through a door that had been built specifically to close behind him. Maybe I should have stopped being surprised by what I didn't know. I looked at the text again. This is the last time he'll be able to wait. That phrasing. Not he's a busy man or he has a tight schedule. The last time he'll be able to wait. Like time itself was the constraint. Like whatever window existed was closing, not because of a calendar, but because of something else entirely. I set my alarm for 7:30 a.m. Then I looked at Helen's photograph one more time. In the pale light of the phone screen, she looked almost present, almost like she might say something. "What do you think?" I asked her. The car was quiet, but in that quiet, for the first time since I'd counted $43 3 times and come up with the same answer, I felt something shift, small, cautious, barely there. Not hope exactly. Something that hadn't yet decided what it was. I closed my eyes. Outside, Chicago went on without me. But for the first time in a long time, I had somewhere to be in the morning. Around 2 in the morning, I stopped trying to sleep. I stare at the ceiling and let my mind go where it wants. Tonight it goes as it sometimes does on the worst nights to November 17th, 2015. My phone had rung at 11 p.m. Helen was beside me reading. The hospital's automated system was clipped and efficient, designed to cut through sleep. Loyola University Medical Center. Critical need for AB negative donors within 10 miles. Life-threatening emergency. Please come to the east donor entrance immediately. I sat up. Helen looked at me over her book. "Go," she said, before I'd spoken a word. "It's 11 o'clock. Someone is dying, Robert. Go." I went. A B negative is the rarest blood type, less than 1% of the population. Hospitals keep lists. They call when they're out of options. I'd been called twice in 30 years. Both times I'd gone because it seemed like the only reasonable thing to do with something you were born with through no effort of your own. A nurse met me at the entrance. Tired, efficient 12 hours into a long shift. "Thank you for coming," she said, already moving. "Vehicle collision on I-90. Grade 4 hemorrhage that means he's lost over 40% of his blood volume. Without more AB negative in the next hour, we lose him." "How old?" I asked. I don't know why I asked that. 63. I donated 2 units. 40 minutes in a reclining chair, a needle in my left arm, staring at a ceiling. When it was done, I stopped at the nurse's station. "The patient," I said. "Is he going to make it?" The nurse looked up. Something crossed her face, not quite a smile, but the closest thing to one that exhaustion allows. "We hope so. That's all I can tell you." I picked up a small note card from the counter, the kind left for visitors, and wrote 4 words. "I hope he's okay." Left it on the counter. Walked out. Home by 2 in the morning. Helen, still awake, book closed on her chest. "Well?" she asked. "They said they hoped so." She reached over and took my hand. "Then that's enough for tonight." I believed her. Went to sleep. Next morning I went to work and I never thought about that night again. Or so I'd believed. Now in a cold car, 10 years later, I look at the faint scar on the inside of my left elbow. A mark so small I'd forgotten it existed. He says you'll know why. I look at the scar for a long time. Something tells me that in a few hours, a door I didn't know existed is about to open. I called back at 7:45. It rang twice. Then a woman's voice, calm, professional, the kind of voice that had answered important calls for a very long time. "This is Dorothea Reyes. My name is Robert Stokes," I said. "You texted me last night." A pause, not surprised, just the pause of someone shifting gears. "Mr. Stokes, thank you for calling back. Mr. Ashford has been waiting." "I don't know a Leonard Ashford," I said. "I want to be honest with you about that up front." "I know," she said. "He expected you to say that." That stopped me. "He expected it." "Yes," he said, and I'm quoting him directly, "he won't know my name. But when you tell him AB negative, he'll understand." The scar on my left elbow suddenly felt warm. "A B negative," I repeated. "Mr. Ashford would like to meet with you this morning if you're available. He's at his residence in Lake Bluff. I can send you the address." I looked around the car. My single suitcase in the back seat. $43 in my wallet. A half-empty tank of gas. "What does he want from me?" I asked. "He doesn't want anything from you, Mr. Stokes." Her voice was even, unhurried. "He wants to give you something. He's been trying to find you for 10 years. 10 years? That's a long time to look for someone," I said carefully. "It is," she agreed. "Which is why I'd ask you not to make him wait any longer. Mr. Ashford is not well. This meeting, it matters to him more than I can explain over the phone." I sat with that for a moment. A billionaire I didn't know had spent a decade trying to find me. His assistant was asking me not to make a dying man wait. And the only connection between us, apparently, was a blood type shared by less than 1% of the human population. "How sick is he?" I asked. A brief silence. "Sick enough that this conversation is happening at 8 in the morning instead of in a proper office meeting." She paused. "Please come, Mr. Stokes." I checked the gas gauge. A quarter tank. Lake Bluff was 47 minutes north. "Send me the address," I said. "Already done." It just came through. I looked at my phone. The address was there, a street in Lake Bluff I didn't recognize. GPS showed 47 minutes. "Mr. Stokes," Dorothea said before I could hang up. "Yes, he's a good man. I've worked for him 22 years. I want you to know that before you walk through that door." I didn't know what to do with that, so I just said thank you. I stopped at a gas station on the way out of the parking lot and put $20 in the tank. Nearly half of everything I had left. The most consequential $20 I'd spent in years, though I didn't know that yet. The gate was iron tall, set between 2 stone pillars with no nameplate. The kind of entrance that didn't need to announce itself. I rolled down my window, an intercom panel. I pressed the button. Mr. Stokes. Dorothea's voice, she'd been watching for me. Come through. I'll meet you at the front. The gate opened inward. I drove through. The driveway curved through a stand of oak trees bare in November branches, reaching across the road like hands. I wasn't paying attention to the scenery. I was running the same calculation I'd been running for 47 minutes on the highway. A man I don't know has spent 10 years looking for me. He's dying. He says I'll know why. I still didn't know why. Dorothea was waiting at the front steps, a woman in her mid-50s, dark coat composed in the way of someone who had managed chaos for decades and learned to wear stillness like armor. She extended her hand as I got out of the Tahoe. Mr. Stokes, thank you for coming. Her eyes moved over me, not judgmental, just observant. The kind of look that took in information without commenting on it. Thank you for the directions, I said. She led me inside, through the entrance hall into a wide sitting room. And that's when I stopped walking. On the wall, framed and lit from above, was a large photograph. A building I recognized immediately, the Portland Cultural Center. The curved eastern facade, the cantilevered upper floor, the exact angle of the entrance canopy that I had redrawn 11 times before I was satisfied. My building. The one with someone else's name on it now. Why is that here? I asked. Dorothea paused beside me. Mr. Ashford has followed your work for a long time. She said it simply, like it was an ordinary thing, like it didn't feel like finding your own reflection in a stranger's house. He knows my work. He knows it well. She gestured toward the hallway. He'll explain. He's been looking forward to this conversation more than any meeting he's had in years. I looked at the photograph one more time. 38 years of work, and the clearest proof that any of it had ever existed was hanging on the wall of a man I'd never met. I followed Dorothea down the hall. She stopped at a set of double doors, dark wood slightly ajar. Firelight flickered through the gap. He tires easily, she said quietly. But he'll push through it. He always does. She looked at me directly. He's been waiting a long time for this, Mr. Stokes. Whatever he tells you in there, please hear him out. She pushed the door open. The room beyond was warm and still. A fire in the grate. Books on every wall. And in a high-backed chair facing the window, a man who turned slowly at the sound of the door. His eyes found mine immediately. They were the sharpest eyes I had ever seen on a dying man. He didn't stand. He couldn't, that much was clear. But he straightened in his chair with a deliberateness that said he was a man who had never allowed his body's limitations to speak for him. Mr. Stokes. His voice was quieter than I expected, measured, like every word had been considered before being spent. Sit down, please. I sat in the chair across from him. Between us, a low table. The fire crackled to my left. Outside the window, bare trees, gray sky, thin snow on the ground. I waited. He looked at me for a long moment, not rudely, but with the focused attention of someone who had been anticipating this exact moment for a very long time and was now taking it in carefully. Then he said, "Do you know your blood type?" Of all the things I had prepared myself to hear, it wasn't that. A B negative, I said. It's rare. Hospitals call me occasionally. He closed his eyes. Just for a second. When he opened them, something had shifted in his expression, something I couldn't name immediately. Relief, maybe. But heavier than relief. Like a man setting down a weight he'd carried so long, he'd forgotten what his hands felt like, empty. Yes, he said. They do call people like you. I know that. He paused. On the night of November 17th, 2015, they called you to Loyola University Medical Center. My spine went still. You came, he continued. You donated 2 units. You asked the nurse whether the patient was going to survive. She told you she hoped so. He looked at me steadily. Before you left, you wrote something on a small card and left it at the nurse's station. I stared at him. 4 words, I said slowly. I hope he's okay. Yes. His voice was barely above a quiet. 4 words. Written by a man who gave 2 units of his blood at midnight for a stranger, and asked nothing in return except whether that stranger was going to live. The fire popped. Neither of us moved. That was you, I said. Not a question. Grade 4 hemorrhage. Vehicle collision on the I-90. He held my gaze. Your blood kept me alive through the next 6 hours while my surgical team worked. The doctors told me afterward that without the AB negative transfusion in that window, I would not have survived to morning. I didn't know what to say. There are moments in life that arrive with no appropriate response, moments where language simply isn't built for the weight of what's being exchanged. I didn't know your name, I finally said. No. You left before anyone could ask. He leaned forward slightly. It took me 10 years to find you, Mr. Stokes. And I need you to understand finding you was the most important thing I have done in the last decade. The fire burned steadily between us. Why, I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached toward the table beside him and picked up a folder worn at the edges like something handled many times. Because, he said quietly, what I owe you is not a thank you. What I owe you is the truth about what has been done to you, and I am running out of time to deliver it. He set the folder on the table, but didn't open it yet. After the accident, he said, I spent 3 weeks in the ICU. When I was well enough to ask questions, I asked the attending physician about the donor. He told me the transfusion had come from a volunteer who responded to the emergency call. AB negative male came in around midnight, left before the shift change. He paused. HIPAA regulations prevented the hospital from giving me a name. Patient privacy laws apply to donors as well as patients. I had no legal right to that information. So you couldn't find me, I said. Not through the hospital, no. He opened the folder. Inside papers printed emails what looked like a private investigator's report. I hired someone in 2018. He spent 4 months working every legal angle available. Nothing. I hired someone else in 2023. Same result. He looked up at me. Do you know what finally led me to you? I shook my head. A note card. He reached into the folder and withdrew a small photograph, a printed image of a handwritten card. 4 words in my own handwriting. I hope he's okay. One of the nurses kept it. She remembered the man who wrote it said he was the only donor that night who stopped to ask about the patient before leaving. She'd held on to it for years. He set the photo on the table between us. A partial thumbprint on the corner of the card. My investigator matched it to Illinois DMV records 8 months ago. I looked at my own handwriting in the photograph. 4 words I'd written without thinking left on a counter and forgotten completely. 10 years, I said quietly. 10 years. He closed the folder. In that time, I built Ashford Capital from nothing. The accident left me with nothing, no prior business, no assets, a body that had nearly died. Your blood bought me the time I needed to survive. Everything I built afterward, every project, every contract, every dollar I built in the years your donation gave back to me. The room was very quiet. I don't say this to be dramatic, he continued. I say it because it is simply what is true. You gave me something that cannot be quantified, and you left without asking for anything. Not a name, not a thank you, nothing. I didn't need anything, I said. I know. His voice was firm. That's exactly why I needed to find you. He leaned back, and for the first time I saw the effort it cost him, the careful way he managed his own breathing. Mr. Stokes, I have perhaps 6 to 8 weeks left. My doctors have been very clear. I have spent the last 8 months making certain that when I go, everything I am responsible for is settled. He looked at me with those sharp, exhausted eyes. You are the most important thing I have left to settle. I opened my mouth. Closed it. There are conversations you prepare yourself for, and conversations that arrive with no warning and no map. This was the second kind. There's something else, he said. Something that cannot wait. He reached for a second folder on the table, this one thicker, newer, its edges still sharp. It concerns your family, Mr. Stokes, and I need you to be prepared for what I'm about to tell you. Before we get to that folder, Leonard said, I need you to understand something first. Because what I'm about to tell you, you'll want context for it. You'll need to know who I am before you can trust what I know. Go ahead, I said. He nodded. When the hospital called you that night, they called 3 people. You were the first to arrive. The second arrived 40 minutes after you, too late for the critical window. The third never came. He paused. You saved my life, Mr. Stokes. Not because you were the closest, because you were the fastest. I didn't respond to that. There was nothing useful to say. After I recovered, he continued, I tried to find you through every legal channel available. The hospital refused correctly under federal privacy law. A private investigator in 2018 found nothing. Another in 2023 found nothing. He looked at the photograph of the note card still on the table between us. It was one of the ICU nurses, Eleanor Taft, who finally gave us the break. She'd kept your card in her personal locker for 7 years. Said she didn't know why she kept it. Just felt like she should. She kept it 7 years, I said. People hold on to things that feel important even when they can't explain why. He said it simply. My investigator lifted a partial thumbprint from the lower corner of the card, ran it against Illinois DMV records, which are accessible under certain legal frameworks for licensed investigators. It matched your license renewal from 2019. He folded his hands. We confirmed identity through your professional registration with the American Institute of Architects, cross-referenced against your studio address. He paused. By that point, the studio address was no longer valid. The room was quiet for a moment. You found me after I'd already lost everything, I said. Yes. He didn't flinch from it. I found you in September 2024. By November 2024, my investigator had a complete picture of your situation. His voice stayed level, but something behind his eyes shifted. I want to be honest with you, Mr. Stokes. When I understood what had happened to your studio, to your IP, to your name, I felt responsible, not for causing it, but for not finding you sooner. That wasn't your fault, I said. No, but it is my reality. He picked up the new folder, which is why I didn't stop at finding you. I started preparing. He set the folder back down without opening it. For 8 months, I have been building something. Not for myself, I won't be here to see it. He met my eyes directly. For you. I looked at him, this thin, exhausted, sharp-eyed man who had spent a decade and a fortune trying to return something to a stranger who had already forgotten giving it. Why, I asked. Why does it matter this much to you? He was quiet for a long moment. Because, he said finally, the night you walked into that hospital, you didn't know me. You didn't know if I deserved to live. You came anyway. He looked at the fire. I have spent my entire life in rooms full of people who calculated what everything was worth before they gave it. You gave without calculating. His voice dropped. That is not a small thing, Mr. Stokes. That is, in my experience, an extraordinarily rare thing. He reached for the folder again. Now, he said quietly, let me tell you what I know about your son-in-law. He opened the folder, but instead of pulling out documents about Marcus, he set the entire folder aside and reached into the drawer of the side table. What he produced was different, a bound document, thick, professionally printed, with a law firm's letterhead on the cover page. Meridian and Cole Attorneys at Law. Before Marcus, he said, there is something else you need to know first. Because without it, nothing I tell you about him will make complete sense. He slid the document across the table toward me. I looked at the cover page. It was a will. Leonard Ashford's will, notarized 2 weeks prior. My name was on the first page. "I don't understand," I said. "Read the summary paragraph. Third line." I found it. Read it twice. Then I set the document down very carefully, the way you set down something fragile. "This can't be right," I said. "It is entirely right," Leonard said. "Every asset held under Ashford Capital Group. The real estate portfolio, the investment holdings, the operating accounts. $1.2 billion, Mr. Stokes. All of it. You have children," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I have 2 people who share my DNA and have spent the last decade waiting for me to die." He said it without bitterness, just the flat clarity of a man who had made his peace with a painful truth. "My son has taken money from my personal accounts without asking on 11 separate occasions. My daughter has called me 19 times in 5 years. Every call ended with a request." He paused. "They will each receive $150,000 and a letter. The letter itemizes every instance I just described. They will have what they need to start over if they choose to. But this," he tapped the will, "is yours." "I gave 2 units of blood," I said. "That's not worth $1.2 billion. "No," he agreed. "It isn't. What you gave me was worth considerably more than that, and considerably less, depending on how you measure it." He looked at me directly. "You gave me time, Mr. Stokes. I used that time to build something. It seems only right that what I built should go to the person who made the building possible." I stood up. I needed to move, needed to do something with the pressure building in my chest. "This will be contested," I said. "Your children will." "Judge Patricia Odom reviewed my mental competency 2 weeks ago." He said it calmly. "She is a retired federal judge with 30 years on the bench. Her assessment is on record and attached to the will. Any legal challenge would face a very high burden, and my attorneys have prepared for it." He watched me pace. "Mr. Stokes, please sit down." I sat. "There is something else in that folder," he said. "Something that changes the context of everything I've just told you." He picked up the thick folder, the one he'd set aside. "This is about Marcus Vane. And once you see it, you will understand why I needed to tell you about the will first." He opened it. "Because what's in here," he said quietly, "is going to make you very angry. And I needed you to know, before you got angry, that you are not without resources." Leonard didn't hand me anything immediately. He looked at me the way a doctor looks at a patient, before a difficult diagnosis, measuring how much to say at once. "In September 2024, he said, when my investigator confirmed your identity, I asked him to build a complete picture of your situation. By November 2024, I had that picture. You've known for a year, I said. Yes, and you waited until now. I was building the infrastructure to help you, not just inform you. His voice stayed even. There is a difference between telling a man his house is on fire and handing him the tools to rebuild. I wanted the tools ready first. I understood the logic. It didn't make the year feel shorter. What did you find? I asked. He pulled a printed email from the folder. Marcus Vane facilitated the transfer of attribution rights for 3 of your designs, Portland, Denver, Austin, through a document you signed in March 2022. You were told it was an insurance formality. It wasn't, I said. It was an irrevocable assignment of intellectual property rights. He said it carefully, like each word mattered. In plain terms, you signed legal ownership of your own work to a holding company Marcus controls through a shell entity registered in Delaware. The document was drafted to look routine. It was not routine. The fire crackled. I didn't move. He's been in contact with a UAE investment firm called Al Rashid Holdings since 2021, Leonard continued. They want to acquire all 3 IP rights for a development project in Dubai. Proposed price $94 million. The number landed in the room like something dropped from a height. "He's selling my work," I said, attempting to. "There is one complication which I created." Leonard paused. "In January of this year, I acquired a minority position in one of the related development entities tied to the IP transfer. That gave my legal team standing to request review demand, supporting documents, and slow the approval process for 18 months. I stared at him. "You've been blocking it, buying time." He met my eyes. "But the delay is nearly exhausted. Marcus has a deadline December 15th to deliver your signature on the final transfer documents. After that, the deal collapses entirely." He leaned forward. "He needs your signature, Mr. Stokes, which is why in the last 3 months he has been very carefully engineering your circumstances." Something cold settled in my chest. "The apartment," I said slowly. "The studio, my daughter's door." "Yes," Leonard said quietly. "All of it." I stood up, sat back down. My hands were steady. I was surprised by that. I'd expected anger to feel loud. Instead, it arrived like cold water. Quiet. Total. "How long has he been planning this?" I asked. Leonard looked at me. 5 years, he said. "From the beginning." 5 years. I sat with that number the way you sit with a diagnosis you already suspected but weren't ready to hear confirmed. Marcus had married Claire in 2020, which meant he had started planning before the wedding, before the rings, before the first family dinner where he'd called me Dad and shaken my hand like a man who meant it. "He came into your family with a blueprint," Leonard said. "Not a metaphor. A literal strategic plan." "You said Portland, Denver, Austin," I said. "Those projects were completed between 2009 and 2014. Marcus didn't know me then." "No, but someone identified their value before he did." Leonard reached into the folder and produced a second document, older, printed on heavier paper. "These are investor records from all 3 projects. Standard disclosure filings, a matter of public record." He set it on the table. "Look at the 3rd column." I looked. Listed among the minority investors for each project, a holding company called Ashford Capital Group. I looked up. "You invested in my work," I said. "Beginning in 2009, yes. The Portland project first, then Denver, then Austin." He didn't look away. "I didn't know your name then, Mr. Stokes. I invested because the designs were exceptional, structurally innovative, in ways that most developers in this city were too conservative to attempt. I followed your work for 6 years before the accident." He paused. "Which means I have been connected to your career for longer than either of us realized." I looked back at the investor records. My 3 buildings. My name on the original filings before it was removed. And Leonard Ashford's holding company quietly present in all 3. "When Marcus identified the IP value," Leonard continued, "he did his research. He would have seen the same investor records. He would have known that the designs had attracted serious institutional interest." He folded his hands. What he didn't know, what I made certain he couldn't know, was that one of those investors had already spent 18 months blocking his transaction. "He didn't know it was you," I said. "He knew a stakeholder had introduced procedural delays. He didn't know who or why." Leonard allowed the smallest pause. For 18 months he has been trying to find and remove that obstacle. He hasn't been able to. Something shifted in my chest, not warmth exactly, but the recognition of something I hadn't expected to find. "You've been standing behind me," I said quietly. "And I didn't know. No one did. That was the point." He looked at the photograph of the Portland building on the wall across the room. "Your work was worth protecting, Mr. Stokes. It still is." I followed his gaze to the photograph. The building I'd designed at 41. Still standing. Still exactly what I'd intended it to be. "The delay runs out in 6 weeks, I said. "Yes." He turned back to me. "Which is why there is one more thing I need to show you. Something that will explain why Marcus is moving so aggressively right now and why his deadline is not negotiable. He reached for a third document. Leonard placed a printed email thread on the table. "This is a communication chain between Marcus Vane and Al Rashid Holdings," he said. "Dated September 2025. My legal team obtained a copy through legitimate means. Ashford Capital is a named third party in a related transaction, which entitled us to discovery access on relevant correspondence." I picked it up. The email was written on Vane and Alderton Company letterhead. Marcus's name at the top. Professional, measured, confident, exactly the way he spoke in person. "The original rights holder is currently experiencing significant financial difficulty. We anticipate having the necessary signature within 8 to 10 weeks. The transaction will be completed before December 15th. I read it twice, then I set it down. "The original rights holder," I said. "That's me." "Yes." He told them I'd sign because I'd be desperate enough. He didn't use that word, but yes, that is precisely what he told them. I looked at the date on the email. September 2025. 2 months ago. Which meant that when Marcus opened his door last Monday and told me the house was too full, he already knew I was sleeping in my car. He had planned for it. He had reported it to his clients like a project milestone. "Timeline on track. Asset is ready." "The bar investigation," Leonard said, pulling another page. "Marcus is currently under review by the Illinois State Bar for misuse of confidential client information, a separate matter involving a commercial real estate dispute in 2023. The review was opened quietly in August. Results are expected in 3 to 4 months. He's about to lose his license," I said. "Potentially. Which is why December 15th is not a preferred deadline. It is a survival deadline. If the bar suspends him before the UAE transaction closes, the deal collapses and he loses everything." Leonard looked at me steadily. "He needs your signature before his professional life falls apart. And he needs you desperate enough not to ask questions." I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, bare trees, thin snow, the kind of landscape that looks like it's waiting for something. 5 years. A wedding. Family dinners. Birthday calls. Every holiday where he'd poured my wine and asked about my projects with what I had taken for genuine interest. All of it a construction project. Me, the material. My work, the prize. "He's good," I said quietly. Not a compliment, just a fact. "He is," Leonard agreed. "Which is why what comes next requires equal precision." I turned from the window. "You said you've been preparing," I said, "for 8 months. What exactly have you prepared?" Leonard looked at me with those sharp, exhausted eyes. "Everything you need," he said. "But there is one thing I could not prepare for you. One thing only you can find." He paused. "Before I tell you what that is, there is something you need to know about your daughter." The room went very quiet. "Claire," I said. "Yes." He held my gaze. "I'm sorry, Mr. Stokes. This part is the hardest." "Sit down," Leonard said, quietly. Not a command, a request. I sat. He didn't speak immediately. He looked at the fire the way a man looks at something when he's choosing his words with particular care. "What I'm about to tell you about Claire," he said, "I will not tell you today. Not yet." I frowned. "You just said," I said, "there's something you need to know." I didn't say I would be the one to tell you. He met my eyes. "Some things a man needs to discover for himself, not because it's easier, but because how you receive information determines how you act on it. If I tell you now, you'll react with emotion. I need you to react with decision." He paused. "When you're ready, truly ready, open the envelope I'm going to give you before you leave today. Not before." I wanted to push back. Every instinct said push back. But something in the way he said it, the weight of a man who had thought carefully about the order of things, made me hold. "Then what are you telling me now?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment. "Then I'm telling you about myself, because I owe you that first." He adjusted in his chair slowly, the way people move when pain is managed rather than absent. When my investigator found you in September 2024, I understood your situation within 6 weeks. By November 2024, I knew about Marcus, the IP, the Delaware entity, the UAE negotiation. He looked at me directly. I also knew that if I had found you in 2023, even in early 2024, I might have been able to intervene before the damage was complete. Before you lost the studio. Before you lost your apartment. His voice didn't waver, but something behind it did. I did not find you in time, and that is something I have to carry. That wasn't your fault, I said. No, but it is my reality. He said it firmly, not self-pity, just honesty. I spent 10 years looking for you. I found you 18 months too late. And because of that, a man who spent 38 years building something extraordinary ended up sleeping in his car while I was preparing paperwork. He paused. I cannot fix that. I can only work with the time I have left. The room was very still. How much time? I asked. He looked at me steadily. My oncologist estimates 6 to 8 weeks. Pancreatic cancer final stage. I declined chemotherapy in October. You declined treatment. Chemotherapy would leave me cognitively impaired for weeks at a time. I needed to be sharp enough to finish what I started. He said it matter-of-factly. I made that choice in full understanding of what it meant. I looked at him, this man who had chosen to die faster so he could think clearly enough to help a stranger he'd never met. I stopped. Don't, he said gently. Please don't thank me. I owe you far more than this. He reached into the drawer beside him and produced a sealed envelope, my name written in careful handwriting on the front. Take this. Open it when you're ready to act, not before. He set it on the table. And Mr. Stokes, there is one more thing I need to show you before you leave today. I don't remember the first 20 minutes of the drive. That happens sometimes. The body takes over when the mind needs a moment to catch up. My hands steered. My foot managed the accelerator. The highway moved under me. And somewhere inside I was still sitting in that chair across from a dying man who had just told me that everything I'd lost had been engineered and that he'd known about it for a year and that he was sorry he hadn't found me sooner. I passed a green sign, Chicago 31 miles. I turned the radio on, then off again immediately. A lot to carry, Helen said. Yeah, I said. That's one way to put it. How are you feeling? I thought about that honestly. I don't know yet. I keep waiting for the anger to arrive properly. It's there, I can feel it. But it's cold. It's not what I expected anger to feel like. What did you expect? Loud, I said. I expected it to be loud. The loud kind burns fast, she said. The cold kind is the one that changes things. I drove in silence for a while. The envelope Leonard had given me was on the passenger seat. Sealed. My name in his handwriting on the front, careful, deliberate letters, the writing of a man who had practiced patience. I'd looked at it 3 times already. Each time I'd looked away. Open it when you're ready to act. Not before. I wasn't ready yet. I knew that much. What I kept returning to was something Leonard had said near the end, almost offhandedly, the way people sometimes say the most important things. He'd told me about the 3 buildings. Portland, Denver, Austin. His name in the investor records on all 3. 6 years of following my work before the accident, before the blood, before any of this. He was watching my work before he knew my name, I said out loud. Does that bother you? No. I surprised myself with how quickly I answered. No, it doesn't. It means somebody understood what I was doing. For 38 years, I built things and put my name on them and assumed that was enough. And then the name got taken, and I thought maybe the work didn't matter without the name attached. I paused. But he invested in the work before he ever knew the name. The work was always real, Helen said quietly. You just forgot that for a while. I gripped the steering wheel. He's dying, I said. 6 to 8 weeks. and he spent his last months making sure I had what I needed. I shook my head slowly. I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to know today. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I glanced at the screen. Claire's name. I hadn't spoken to my daughter in 3 weeks, not since the door in Lincoln Square closed behind me. And now, 40 minutes after leaving the home of a man who knew something about her that he wouldn't tell me yet, her name was on my screen. I stared at the road ahead. Then I reached over and answered it. Dad. Her voice was careful, measured, the way people sound when they've rehearsed an opening line. Claire, I said. A pause. Are you okay? Marcus mentioned someone called you yesterday. He said it seemed unusual. Marcus mentioned it. Of course he did. I'm fine, I said. An old acquaintance needed to get in touch. Nothing dramatic. Who was it? Someone I helped years ago. We hadn't spoken since. I kept my voice even. Why are you asking? Another pause, slightly longer this time. I'm just checking on you, Dad. You've been... She stopped, started again. It's been a hard few months. I worry. She worried. She worried while her husband turned away at the door with a rehearsed explanation about a full house. She worried while I counted $43 in a parking lot 3 miles from her kitchen. I appreciate that, I said. Dad. Something shifted in her voice. Just slightly. Do you still have paperwork from the studio, from before the restructuring? I took my foot off the accelerator slightly. What kind of paperwork? Just documents. From the original partnership. Anything with your name on it from before 2022. The highway stretched ahead. Bare trees on both sides. A truck passed me on the left. Why are you asking about that, Claire? A silence that lasted exactly 1 beat too long. No reason, she said. Marcus mentioned there might be some loose administrative threads still, from the transition. He thought if you had anything, it would be easier to just clear it up properly. Tie everything off. Tie everything off. I thought about the email I'd read an hour ago. The original rights holder is experiencing financial difficulty. We anticipate having the necessary signature within 8 to 10 weeks. Marcus didn't know about Leonard. He didn't know what I'd spent the morning learning. But he knew I'd been called by someone, and now he was using my daughter's voice to find out what I was holding. I don't have anything, I said. Most of it was in the studio. When I cleared out my office, there wasn't much left. Okay. The relief in her voice was too quick, too clean. That's fine, I just wanted to check. Of course. A beat. Dad, are you really okay? And there it was. Underneath the rehearsed question and the careful phrasing and the husband's instructions, something that sounded like my daughter. Small, real, uncertain. I'm okay, I said. I'll be okay. You should come for dinner sometime. When things settle. Sure, I said. When things settle. We said goodbye. I put the phone down. I drove the remaining 20 miles without speaking, not even to Helen. Some things need silence to become clear. By the time I reached the city limits, one thing was absolutely certain. Claire had asked about the paperwork because Marcus told her to, but the way her voice had cracked just slightly on that last question. That hadn't been Marcus. Leonard looked worse than Tuesday. Not dramatically, not the way illness looks in movies, sudden and obvious. It was subtler than that. The line of his jaw was sharper. The skin beneath his eyes had darkened. He moved more carefully when he adjusted in his chair, the way a man moves when he's managing something he doesn't want to show. You came back, he said. You knew I would, I said, something close to a smile. Yes, I did. A younger man entered the room before we could continue, early 40s. Professional bearing, carrying a small medical bag. He nodded at me without introduction, crossed to Leonard, and spoke quietly. Time for the midday dose. Leonard extended his arm without looking away from me. The man administered an injection, noted something on a small pad, and left as efficiently as he'd arrived. Pain management, Leonard said, answering the question I hadn't asked. Twice daily now. What's the medication? I asked. Hydromorphone. It manages the pain without the cognitive fog that heavier sedatives produce. He said it practically like a man describing a maintenance schedule. My oncologist wanted to move to a stronger protocol 3 weeks ago. I declined. Why? He looked at me steadily. Because stronger sedation would mean I couldn't have this conversation with full clarity, or the conversations that follow it. He paused. I made a choice in October, Mr. Stokes. Chemotherapy would have bought me perhaps 4 additional months, but those months would have been largely lost to treatment side effects. Fatigue, cognitive impairment, weeks at a time, where I couldn't think clearly enough to manage complex decisions. So you chose not to treat it, I said. I chose to use the time I had rather than fight for time I couldn't use. He said it without drama, just a man who had thought carefully about a hard thing and arrived at a conclusion. There were things that needed to be done. The will, the legal preparations, finding you, ensuring that what I built could be transferred properly. He met my eyes. I needed to be sharp for all of it. So I stayed sharp. I looked at him for a long moment. You chose to die sooner, I said quietly, so you could think clearly enough to help me. I chose to use my remaining time well. He said it firmly. Don't make it larger than it is. It's already large, I said. He didn't argue. He reached for a glass of water on the table beside him slowly, deliberately, and took a careful sip. There is something I need to show you today, he said. Something I couldn't show you on Tuesday because I needed you to sit with what you'd already learned first. He set the glass down. My assistant is bringing a laptop. What you're about to see is a complete email record, Marcus Vane's communication with Al Rashid Holdings from 2021 to present. He looked at me. Every step of the 5 years, he said, in his own words. Dorothea set the laptop on the table in front of me without a word and stepped back toward the door. The screen showed an email thread. Marcus Vane's company address at the top. Al Rashid Holdings Dubai on the receiving end. The earliest message was dated March 2021. I started reading. March 2021. Marcus had been married to Claire for 8 months. I represent a portfolio of architectural IP assets with significant development potential. The original rights holder is elderly and approaching retirement. I anticipate full legal control of the assets within 18 to 24 months. I'd welcome the opportunity to discuss acquisition interest at your earliest convenience. Elderly. Approaching retirement. I had been 60 years old, still running a studio, still drawing. He had described me like an asset being phased out of service. I scrolled down. September 2021. A follow-up after Al Rashid had expressed interest. The 3 primary assets, Portland, Denver, Austin, represent landmark designs with strong market recognition. Combined acquisition value in current Gulf development markets would conservatively exceed $90 million. I can provide full documentation upon execution of an NDA. He had known the price before he had the product. January 2022, 2 months before the kitchen table. Legal groundwork is in place. Anticipate signature on transfer documentation within 60 days. The process will be seamless. The rights holder is a trusting individual with no independent legal representation reviewing the specific document in question. A trusting individual. I stopped reading. Looked at the fire. Looked back at the screen. A trusting individual. He had written those words to a foreign investment firm about his wife's father. He had sat at my kitchen table and called me Dad, and passed me a pen, and watched me sign away 38 years of work, and 2 months earlier he had described me in writing as a trusting individual with no one watching out for him. Keep reading, Leonard said quietly. The 2023 entries. I scrolled forward. June 2023, 3 months after the signing. Transfer complete. Attribution rights now fully held under the Delaware entity. Original rights holder has been informed the studio restructuring is administrative only. He does not yet understand the full scope of the transfer. Timeline to final transaction, 18 to 24 months, pending market conditions. He does not yet understand. August 2025. Rights holder's financial situation has deteriorated significantly as planned. Apartment lease not renewed. Studio access terminated. Family housing declined. Signature on final UAE transfer documents expected within 8 to 10 weeks. Transaction close by December 15th. As planned, I closed the laptop. The room was very quiet. Leonard didn't speak. Dorothea didn't move. I sat with my hands flat on the table and looked at nothing in particular. The anger I'd described to Helen on the drive home, cold, quiet, total, had settled into something even stiller now. Something that didn't need to announce itself. He documented everything, I said finally. Men who believe they're untouchable often do, Leonard said. I looked up. You said there was one thing you couldn't prepare for me. One thing only I could find. Leonard nodded slowly. My daughter, I said. He didn't answer immediately. He looked at me with those careful, exhausted eyes. There is something in that envelope, he said. When you're ready. Tell me, I said. Whatever it is, tell me now. Leonard shook his head, slowly, deliberately. No, you've told me everything else. I've told you about Marcus, because you needed facts to act on. Facts about a man you already knew was your enemy. He paused. What's in that envelope concerns someone you love. That's different. If I tell you now in this room, you'll walk out of here with the wrong kind of anger, the kind that makes decisions for you instead of the other way around. I wanted to argue. I didn't because he was right, and I knew he was right, and that made it worse. When, I asked, when you're ready to act, not to react. He looked at me steadily. You'll know the difference. I looked at the envelope on the table. My name in his handwriting. The paper slightly worn at the corners. He'd handled it many times before today. I picked it up. The weight of it was ordinary. Whatever was inside it didn't feel like much. But I'd learned in the last 2 days that the most consequential things rarely announce themselves by weight. I put it in my jacket pocket. There's one more thing, Leonard said. He pressed the small bell on the table beside him. Dorothea appeared at the door within seconds, the efficiency of someone who had spent decades anticipating what was needed before it was asked for. The business card, Leonard said. She produced it from her jacket pocket and placed it on the table. Plain white card. A name, Carl Briggs, attorney at law. A phone number, nothing else. Carl Briggs is a former federal prosecutor, Leonard said. 12 years with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Chicago before moving to private practice. He specializes in intellectual property litigation and civil fraud. He looked at me. I contacted him 7 months ago. I explained your situation in full. He has reviewed all documentation I've shared with you today. You hired him already, I said. His retainer has been paid for 6 months. He is waiting for your call. Leonard paused. He cannot act until you authorize him to. That decision belongs to you alone. But when you make it, he is ready. I picked up the card. You've thought of everything, I said. I've tried to. Something moved across his face, not quite regret, but close. I couldn't think of everything. I couldn't think of the 18 months I lost. He adjusted in his chair. What I could do, I did. I stood. Leonard made no move to stand. He couldn't, and we both knew it. I'll come back, I said. Saturday, he said. I'd like you here Saturday. There's a document I need you to witness. It's important that it's done properly with the right people in the room. I'll be here. I shook his hand. His grip was weaker than Tuesday. I felt it. He felt me notice it. Neither of us commented. Dorothea walked me to the front door. At the threshold, she put her hand briefly on my arm, light, precise, the gesture of someone who rarely made unnecessary contact. He's been carrying this for a long time, she said quietly. Thank you for coming. I stepped outside into the cold. The envelope was in my pocket. The business card was in my hand. And somewhere between the front door and the Tahoe, I understood that the version of myself who had counted $43 4 nights ago was already becoming someone else. I just didn't know yet exactly who. There were 4 of us in the library, Leonard in his chair. A notary public named Gerald Marsh, 60s, quiet, the practiced invisibility of someone who had witnessed important moments for decades without being part of them. And in the corner, almost still enough to be furniture, a woman I recognized from the news photographs Leonard had shown me earlier in the week. Judge Patricia Odom, retired, 31 years on the federal bench before stepping down in 2021. She was 70 now, compact, watchful, with the particular stillness of someone who had spent 3 decades listening before speaking. Judge Odom assessed my mental competency 2 weeks ago, Leonard said as I sat down. Her certification is attached to the will as Exhibit A. It establishes unambiguously that I am of sound mind and acting without coercion. He looked at me directly. I want you to understand why she's here today. Not for my benefit. For yours. For mine, I said. When my children challenge this will, and they will, the first argument their attorneys will make is that I was cognitively impaired by illness or medication when I signed. He said it with the calm of a man who had anticipated this argument and neutralized it in advance. Judge Odom's presence today eliminates that argument entirely. No court in Illinois will question her assessment. Gerald Marsh opened his briefcase and produced the will, the same bound document I'd seen on Tuesday, now with additional exhibits attached. Leonard signed first. Slowly, deliberately. His hand moved with effort, but the signature was clear and complete. Mr. Stokes, Gerald said, as witness. I signed. Leonard watched me do it. When I looked up, something in his expression had shifted, the particular relief of a man who has carried something heavy for a long time and has finally set it down in the right place. There's one more page, Leonard said. Gerald turned to the final exhibit. I read the heading, Helen Marie Stokes Foundation for Community Architecture Founding Charter. I stopped. You used her name, I said. You mentioned her on Thursday. The way you spoke about her. Leonard paused. It seemed right. A foundation that gives young architects from underfunded communities access to professional training and mentorship. $90 million in dedicated endowment separate from the main estate. He looked at me. She was the reason you went to that hospital in 2015, wasn't she? She told you to go. I couldn't speak for a moment. Go, she had said. Someone is dying, Robert. Go. Yes, I said. She did. Then it's her foundation, Leonard said simply. I looked at the charter. Helen's name printed in clean type at the top of the page. A thing that would exist in the world long after both Leonard and I were gone, built from a midnight blood donation and a decade of searching and a dying man's last months of careful work. I signed the charter page. I didn't try to stop the tears. There didn't seem to be any point. Leonard reached across and put his hand briefly over mine. She sounds like she was extraordinary. She was, I said. She really was. The phone rang at 6:17 a.m. I was already half awake. I looked at the screen. Dorothea. Mr. Stokes. Her voice was composed, the steadiness of someone who had prepared for this moment long before it arrived. Mr. Ashford passed at 6:17 this morning. It was peaceful. He wasn't in pain. I sat up slowly. Was anyone with him? I asked. I was. I've been with him every morning for 22 years. I wasn't going to stop now. I didn't say anything. There was nothing adequate, so I didn't try. He told me Sunday evening after you left that he felt he'd finished what he needed to finish. She paused. He also asked me to give you a message. Go ahead. He said, tell him the work was always real. The name on it was never the point. I pressed my hand over my eyes. He had listened. On Sunday, when I'd talked about the buildings and the names and what it meant to watch my own name disappear, he had listened and remembered and made sure the words found me anyway. Thank you, I said, for everything you did for him. He made it easy, she said quietly. That was the thing about Leonard. He always made it easy to do right by him. A brief pause. The estate attorney will contact you within 48 hours regarding formal probate. You don't need to do anything immediately. Just be available. I will be. One more thing. A drawer opened on her end. He left something for you with me personally, not through the estate. I'll bring it when we meet with the attorneys. What is it? Something small, but I think it will matter to you. She ended the call. I sat on the edge of the bed without moving. Outside the window, snow was falling thin and quiet, the kind that covers everything without preference. November 11th, Veterans Day. A day for people who gave something of themselves so others could continue. Leonard hadn't chosen the date deliberately, but it didn't feel accidental either. I looked at the 2 envelopes on the nightstand. The second one, open after I'm gone, was already open. I'd read it twice the night before. Read it and set it down and stared at the ceiling for an hour. The first envelope, open when you're ready to act, was still sealed. I picked it up, turned it over, put it back down. Not yet, I thought. But I'm getting close. I picked it up again at 7. I don't know what changed in those 40 minutes. Maybe nothing changed. Maybe I'd already decided on the phone with Dorothea and just needed time to catch up to myself. I opened it. Inside, 2 items. A folded letter, handwritten, and a smaller envelope within, sealed with a note clipped to the front. Read the letter first. I unfolded the letter. Leonard's handwriting. Careful, deliberate. The same hand that had written my name on the outside. Mr. Stokes, I'm sorry I couldn't say this to your face. Some things are easier to receive on paper where there's no one watching you absorb them. Your daughter has known about the studio transfer since June 2023. Not from you. From Marcus. He told her himself 3 months after the signing. He believed she would stand with him. He told her the transfer was legal, that you had signed willingly, that the restructuring was genuinely in your interest. He was persuasive. He had been persuasive with her for 3 years by then. She did not tell you. She chose silence, I believe, out of fear, not malice. But silence, as you know, has consequences regardless of the reason behind it. The smaller envelope contains screenshots of iMessage conversations between Claire and Marcus from June 2023 and August 2025. Claire sent them to me through an anonymous email address in November of this year. She didn't explain why. She didn't ask for anything. She simply sent them and went quiet. I don't know what that means. I think only she does. I'm leaving this for you to decide, not because I don't care about the outcome, but because this is yours to carry. I've given you everything I could give. The rest belongs to you and to her. Leonard. I set the letter down, sat very still. June 2023. 2 years ago. My daughter had known for 2 years. Every Sunday phone call since then. Every birthday. Every time she'd asked how I was doing in that careful voice and I'd said fine because I didn't want to worry her, she had already known. She had been carrying it the entire time. I thought about the door in Lincoln Square. The way she'd stood behind Marcus and wouldn't meet my eyes. The way her lips had pressed together in that line I'd known since she was 8 years old. She hadn't been protecting Marcus. She'd been ashamed. I opened the smaller envelope. The screenshots were printed on 3 pages. Message threads, time-stamped, clearly authentic. I read them once straight through without stopping. Then I looked out the window at the snow. She sent them herself, Helen said quietly in my head. She didn't have to, but she did. I know, I said. What are you going to do? I reached for Carl Briggs's business card on the nightstand. I'm going to be ready, I said. Finally. I hadn't been here since August. Helen's headstone was simple. Her name, her years, and one line she'd asked for herself. She paid attention. I'd thought it was an odd choice when she told me. Now, 6 years later, it seemed like the most accurate thing anyone had ever said about her. I brushed snow off the top of the stone with my sleeve and stood there for a moment without speaking. The cemetery was empty this time of day. Just the wind and the bare trees and the distant sound of the city continuing without pause. A lot has happened, I said finally. Since August. I told her everything. Leonard, the blood, the 10 years, the will, the foundation with her name on it. I watched my own breath disappear in the cold air as I talked, and I thought about how strange it was that the most honest conversations I'd had in years were with a woman who couldn't answer back. Claire knew, I said. Since June 2023, I paused. I keep trying to be angry about it. The proper kind, the loud kind. But every time I get close, I think about the screenshots she sent Leonard. She didn't have to do that. Marcus didn't know. Nobody asked her to, she just sent them. And went quiet. The wind moved through the trees. You used to say people aren't bad because they want to be bad. They're bad because they're afraid. I looked at the stone. What was she afraid of, Helen? Losing him. Losing me. Losing the version of her life that still looked normal from the outside. No answer. There never was. But standing there, I realized I was asking the wrong question. It didn't matter yet what she'd been afraid of. What mattered was what she'd done when the fear got heavy enough. She'd sent those screenshots to a stranger because she needed someone to know even if she couldn't say it out loud. That was something. It wasn't enough. But it was something. I'm going to call a lawyer this afternoon, I said. Former federal prosecutor. Leonard hired him 7 months ago and paid 6 months retainer in advance. I almost smiled at that. He thought of everything. I put my hand on top of the headstone for a moment. I'm not the same man I was last week, I said quietly. I don't entirely know who I am right now, but I think I'm starting to find out. I stood there another minute. Then I walked back to the car. On the seat, Carl Briggs's card was face up where I'd left it. I picked it up, looked at it, and dialed. It rang twice. Briggs. Clipped. Direct. The voice of a man who didn't waste time on pleasantries. My name is Robert Stokes, I said. Leonard Ashford told me to call you. A brief pause. Then, I've been waiting for this call for 7 months, Mr. Stokes. Where would you like to meet? The office was on the 18th floor. No artwork on the walls. No decorative anything. Just bookshelves, case files, and a desk that looked like it had been worked at seriously for 20 years. Carl Briggs stood when I walked in. 52, lean, the kind of face that had stopped being readable a long time ago. He shook my hand once firmly and gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit down, he said. I'll skip the small talk. Please do, I said. He opened a folder thick, already organized. Leonard Ashford retained me in April of this year. He provided full documentation of the IP transfer, the Delaware shell entity, the Al-Rashid correspondence, and the Illinois State Bar investigation into Marcus Vane. He looked up. I've reviewed everything. I want to tell you where we stand. Go ahead. Marcus transferred your intellectual property rights through what's called a fraudulent assignment, a document designed to appear routine while actually conveying permanent legal ownership. He said it cleanly, no editorializing. In Illinois, a fraudulent assignment can be challenged under the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. To succeed, we need to demonstrate 3 things: that the transfer was made without adequate consideration, meaning you received nothing of value in exchange, that it was executed under false pretenses, and that it caused you demonstrable financial harm. All 3 are true, I said. All 3 are documentable, he said, which is different and more important. He pulled a page from the folder. The Al-Rashid emails established that Marcus knew the true value of the assets at the time of transfer. The Delaware entity records established that the holding company was created 6 months before the signing premeditation. And your current financial situation, he paused not unkindly, establishes harm beyond any reasonable dispute. What about the Bar investigation? I asked. The Illinois State Bar opened a formal inquiry into Marcus in August misuse of confidential client information in a separate commercial matter. Results expected in 3 to 4 months. Briggs set the page down. If the Bar suspends his license before December 15th, The Al-Rashid transaction collapses regardless of what we do. But we don't build our case on someone else's timeline. So we file independently. Civil fraud, IP theft, breach of fiduciary duty. He looked at me steadily. I want to be honest with you, Mr. Stokes. The case is strong, but strong cases still require courage from the plaintiff. You will be deposed. You will be cross-examined by Marcus's attorneys, who are very good. And you will have to sit across a table from your son-in-law and answer questions under oath. I understand that, I said. Good. He closed the folder. Then here is what I need from you. The original contract documents from before 2022, if any exist. A corroborating witness, someone with direct knowledge of the transfer circumstances. And time. He paused. We have approximately 6 weeks before December 15th. That is enough if we move now. My phone buzzed on the desk between us. An email notification. Unknown sender. Subject line: Re Callaway and Stokes contract files. You need to see this. I looked at Briggs. Are you expecting something? He asked. No, I said. But I think something just found me. The conference room was on the 31st floor. I arrived early. Briggs was already there, standing near the window with a coffee he hadn't touched. He nodded when I walked in, but didn't speak. We both understood what kind of morning this was going to be. They arrived 7 minutes late. Leonard's son, 40, heavy in the shoulders, wearing the expression of a man who had already decided how this meeting would go. His sister behind him, 37, thinner, quieter, with careful eyes that moved around the room before she sat down. Judge Patricia Odom was in the corner. Neither of them looked at her for long. The estate attorney, a trim woman named Sandra Cole, opened the proceedings without ceremony. I'll read the relevant distributions directly, she said. Mr. Ashford's will was executed November 2nd, mental competency, certified by Judge Odom on October 19th, notarized by Gerald Marsh. It is not subject to challenge on those grounds. Leonard's son shifted in his chair. His attorney sitting beside him put a hand briefly on his arm. A practiced gesture. Not yet. Sandra Cole read the distributions. $150,000 to Leonard's son. Attached a personal letter listing 11 unauthorized withdrawals from Leonard's accounts between 2018 and 2024, totaling $340,000. The letter noted that the bequest represented partial restitution, not reward. $150,000 to Leonard's daughter. Attached a personal letter referencing 19 phone calls over 5 years, each ending with a financial request. The letter wished her well without warmth. Then the residual estate. $1.2 billion in its entirety to Robert Stokes. Leonard's son stood up. Who is? Sit down, Judge Odom said from the corner. She hadn't moved. She hadn't raised her voice. But the authority in it was absolute. 31 years on the federal bench compressed into 2 words. He sat. I reached into my jacket and produced the letter Leonard had written for this moment. A public statement, notarized separately, explaining the blood bond, the 10 years of searching, and his reasons. Sandra Cole read it into the record. When she finished, the room was quiet. Leonard's daughter was looking at me. Not with anger, with something I couldn't immediately name. Something closer to recognition than hostility. Like she was trying to place a face she'd seen somewhere before. I looked away. Outside in the hallway after the meeting ended, my phone rang. Number I didn't recognize. Mr. Stokes. A man's voice. Younger. Focused. My name is Stephen Lowe. I'm a reporter with the Chicago Tribune. I'm writing about the Al-Rashid Holdings acquisition and the IP dispute involving Callaway and Stokes Design. I wanted to give you an opportunity to comment before the piece runs. I looked at Briggs beside me. When does it run? I asked. We're targeting December 15th, Lowe said. December 15th. The same day as Marcus's deadline. I'll call you back, I said. Briggs looked at me. Tribune, Stephen Lowe. He's writing about the Al-Rashid acquisition and the IP dispute. I pocketed my phone. He's targeting December 15th for publication. Briggs was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then, that changes the timeline. How? Al-Rashid is a sophisticated investment group. The moment a major newspaper publishes an article describing the IP as disputed, actively litigated, they pull out. No Gulf sovereign wealth fund touches a $94 million acquisition with an unresolved fraud claim attached to it. He looked at me steadily. If Lowe's article runs before Marcus has your signature, the deal dies regardless of what we file. So Marcus knows this too, I said. Marcus absolutely knows this, which means he's known about the Tribune investigation for at least a week. These things don't stay quiet in legal circles. And knowing that his December 15th deadline is now also a publication deadline. Briggs paused. He's going to move faster than he planned. I thought about Claire's phone call, the careful questions about paperwork. Marcus mentioned someone called you. He's already moving, I said. Briggs nodded slowly. Which means we need to file before he can create any additional complications. Courts take time, but filing creates a public record immediately. The moment our civil complaint hits the Cook County docket, it becomes discoverable. Lowe will find it within hours. And Al-Rashid sees it. And Al-Rashid sees it, Briggs confirmed. The deal collapses on its own, without us needing to win in court first. He looked at me carefully. But to file, I need 2 things I don't have yet. The original contract documents, and a corroborating witness. The email. The one that had arrived on my phone at his office 6 days ago. I'd replied the same evening. The response had come back within an hour, cautious brief asking if we could meet in person. I'd said yes. The meeting was scheduled for next week. I may have both, I said. Briggs raised an eyebrow, the closest thing to surprise I'd seen from him. The email from 6 days ago. Junior architect at the old studio. She found something in July. She's been sitting on it for 8 months. I paused. She's scared. But she reached out. Get her in front of me, Briggs said. With whatever she found. Before the end of next week. I'll try. Don't try, Mr. Stokes. His voice was even but firm. We have 27 days. After that, with or without the Tribune, Marcus either has your signature or he doesn't. If he doesn't, the deal collapses and we proceed at normal litigation pace, which means years, not weeks. He looked at me directly. 27 days is enough, but only if we use all of them. I thought about a man who had declined chemotherapy to stay sharp enough to prepare for this exact moment. I'll get her there, I said. Briggs picked up his briefcase. Good. One more thing, don't contact Claire until we've filed. Whatever is between you and your daughter, keep it separate from the legal process until the complaint is on record. I nodded. He walked toward the elevator. I stayed by the window. 27 days. The city spread out below, gray, cold, indifferent. Somewhere in it, Marcus Vane was already recalculating. So was I. The motel was better than the parking lot. Not by much, but enough. A real bed. A working heater. I'd paid the first week with a cash advance from the estate's interim account that Dorothea had arranged. It felt strange spending money that hadn't fully become mine yet. But sleeping horizontally felt strange too after enough weeks in a car. I was reading when the phone rang. Claire! I set the book down and looked at the screen for a full 3 seconds before answering. Hi, Dad. Her voice was warm, prepared. The warmth of someone who had practiced it. How are you doing? I've been thinking about you. I'm okay, I said. Getting settled. Good. That's good. A pause too brief, too smooth. Listen, Marcus and I were thinking we'd love to have you over for dinner. Properly. Just the 3 of us, no pressure, just catch up. Clear the air a little. Another pause. We feel terrible about how things have been. We want to fix it. Fix it. I thought about the email Marcus had sent Al-Rashid in September. The original rights holder is experiencing financial difficulty as planned. I thought about the kitchen table in 2022 and the pen he'd handed me and the easy smile. I thought about Claire standing 10 feet away in that hallway, not meeting my eyes. When? I asked. Wednesday the 10th, dinner at 7, December 10th. 5 days before the Tribune deadline. 5 days before Marcus's signature deadline. The timing wasn't accidental. Nothing Marcus did was accidental. Sure, I said. Wednesday the 10th works. Wonderful. The relief in her voice was real. I could hear it underneath the performance. Real relief, which meant real anxiety before the call. She'd been dreading this, which meant it hadn't been entirely her idea. We'll make it nice. It'll be good, Dad. I promise. I'm sure it will, I said. We said goodbye. I put the phone on the bed, sat very still. Marcus had heard about the will through his legal contacts. That was inevitable. He knew about the Tribune. He knew his December 15th deadline was now a publication deadline too. And so he'd arranged a dinner through Claire's voice at the exact moment when he calculated I'd be most likely to want family badly enough to sign something. He still thought I was the man from the parking lot. He still thought $43 and a turned-away door were enough to make me desperate. I looked at the bedside table. Briggs had said, "Don't contact Claire until we file." He hadn't said, "Don't accept an invitation." I reached for the sealed envelope I'd been carrying since Lake Bluff, the one with my name in Leonard's handwriting. Already opened now, already read. Already. I thought about what it contained. Then I looked at the calendar on my phone. December 10th. 18 days away. I had work to do first. I picked up my phone and opened the email from the junior architect. Read her last message again. Then typed 4 words. "Can we meet Monday?" I read Leonard's letter a second time that night. Not because I'd forgotten what it said. Because I needed to sit with it properly, not in the shock of first reading, but in the quieter, colder light of an evening when the shock had passed and only the facts remained. Your daughter has known since June 2023. I set the letter down and opened the smaller envelope inside. 3 printed pages, screenshots of iMessage conversations, time-stamped clear. The first thread was dated June 14th, 2023. 3 months after the kitchen table signing. Marcus had written, "I told you about the transfer. I need you to understand your father signed willingly. He understood what he was signing. This was always the plan for the studio restructuring. He's fine with it." Claire had replied, "He didn't mention it to me, Marcus. He wouldn't. You know how he is, he doesn't like to worry you. He's fine, Claire. I promise." Claire, okay. 1 word, okay. I sat with that for a long time. She had been given a version of events by a man she trusted, and she had chosen to believe it because believing it was easier than the alternative. I understood that. I had done the same thing at the kitchen table with a pen in my hand. The second thread was dated August 19th, 2025. Marcus, if your father asks about any paperwork related to the old partnership, tell him it's all been handled. Don't give him details. Just reassure him. Claire, why? Marcus, because the less he digs into the administrative history, the cleaner the final transition will be. It's almost done. 6 more weeks. A long pause in the thread. Then Claire. Is he okay? He sounded tired when I called last week. Marcus, he's fine. Focus on us. Focus on us. I set the pages down. She had asked if I was okay. That was the thing I kept returning to. In August, when Marcus was calmly reporting my deteriorating situation to UAE investors as a strategic milestone, Claire had asked if I was okay. And Marcus had told her to focus on them. She hadn't pushed back, but she'd asked. The third item in the envelope wasn't a screenshot. It was a single printed page, a record of phone calls between Claire and me over the past 26 months. Dates, durations, frequency. The pattern was unmistakable. Before June 2023, Calls every week, sometimes twice. After June 2023, calls every 2 to 3 weeks. After August 2025, almost nothing. The timeline of her silence tracked exactly with what Marcus had told her and when. She sent those screenshots herself, Helen said. I know, I said. She didn't have to. I know that too. I folded the pages carefully and put them back in the envelope. My hands were steady. The anger was there, I could feel it, cold and patient. But underneath it, something else. A question I couldn't answer yet. What had finally made her send them? She was already there when I arrived. 27 years old, maybe small, dark-haired, sitting very straight in the chair across from Briggs's desk, with a USB drive and a manila folder on her lap. She looked like someone who had been rehearsing what to say for a long time, and was now terrified she'd forgotten it. She stood when I walked in. Mr. Stokes. Her voice was steadier than her hands. My name is Rachel Torres. I'm a junior architect at Callaway & Associates. I used to work under your designs before. She stopped. Started again. I need to show you something I found in July. I sat down. Show me. Briggs closed the door. Rachel set the folder on the desk and opened it. Inside, printed documents, time-stamped file metadata, and what appeared to be 2 contracts side by side. In July, she said, I was cleaning out a backup server, old files from before the studio rebranded. Most of it was administrative, but I found 2 contract versions for the same document. The original dated February 2022, and a revised version dated March 4, 2022, the day before you signed. She pointed to a highlighted section on each page. The original document was a standard studio restructuring agreement. It transferred operational management, only not IP rights. No attribution transfer. No ownership change. She looked at me. The revised version added 4 paragraphs that weren't in the original. Those 4 paragraphs are what transferred legal ownership of your designs to the Delaware Holding Company. The paragraphs were added the day before I signed, I said. Yes. And the metadata confirms that the file was modified at 11:47 p.m. on March 3rd. The document you signed the next morning had been altered less than 12 hours earlier. She paused. I ran a comparison. The font spacing in those 4 paragraphs is 0.3 points different from the rest of the document. It's not visible to the naked eye. But it's there. The room was very quiet. Briggs leaned forward. Ms. Torres, why did you wait 8 months? She looked at her hands. 3 weeks after I found the files, a colleague asked questions about an old contract. He was let go the following Friday. Performance issues officially. She looked up. I have a student loan of $90,000. I have a mother in Rockford who I help with rent. I was scared. Her voice didn't waver. I'm still scared. But I read about Mr. Stokes in the Tribune coverage of the estate, and I thought... She stopped. What did you think? I asked. She looked at me directly. I thought about why I wanted to be an architect in the first place. I studied your Portland building for a semester in school. The load distribution on the eastern facade, my professor said it was the most elegant structural solution he'd seen in 20 years. She paused. Someone who built that deserves to have their name on it. The room held that for a moment. Briggs picked up the USB drive. This is everything. Everything, Rachel said. Original files, metadata logs, the comparison analysis I ran. It's all there. Briggs looked at me. This is the corroborating evidence we needed. I looked at Rachel Torres, this 27-year-old, who had carried a secret for 8 months out of fear, and then carried it to this room out of something else entirely. Thank you, I said. She nodded. Then quietly, does this help? Yes, Briggs said. This changes everything. She was already there when I arrived. 27 years old, maybe small, dark-haired, sitting very straight in the chair across from Briggs's desk with a USB drive and a manila folder on her lap. She looked like someone who had been rehearsing what to say for a long time and was now terrified she'd forgotten it. She stood when I walked in. "Mr. Stokes?" Her voice was steadier than her hands. "My name is Rachel Torres. I'm a junior architect at Callaway and Associates. I used to work under your designs before." She stopped, started again. "I need to show you something I found in July." I sat down. "Show me." Briggs closed the door. Rachel set the folder on the desk and opened it. Inside, printed documents, time-stamped file metadata, and what appeared to be 2 contracts side by side. "In July," she said, "I was cleaning out a backup server, old files from before the studio rebranded. Most of it was administrative, but I found 2 contract versions for the same document. The original dated February 2022, and a revised version dated March 4th, 2022, the day before you signed." She pointed to a highlighted section on each page. The original document was a standard studio restructuring agreement. It transferred operational management only, not IP rights. No attribution transfer. No ownership change. She looked at me. The revised version added 4 paragraphs that weren't in the original. Those 4 paragraphs are what transferred legal ownership of your designs to the Delaware holding company. "The paragraphs were added the day before I signed," I said. "Yes. And the metadata confirms it. The file was modified at 11:47 p.m. on March 3rd. The document you signed the next morning had been altered less than 12 hours earlier." She paused. I ran a comparison. The font spacing in those 4 paragraphs is 0.3 points different from the rest of the document. It's not visible to the naked eye, but it's there. The room was very quiet. Briggs leaned forward. "Ms. Torres, why did you wait 8 months?" She looked at her hands. 3 weeks after I found the files, a colleague asked questions about an old contract. He was let go the following Friday. Performance issues officially. She looked up. "I have a student loan of $90,000. I have a mother in Rockford who I help with rent. I was scared." Her voice didn't waver. "I'm still scared. But I read about Mr. Stokes in the Tribune coverage of the estate, and I thought—" She stopped. "What did you think?" I asked. She looked at me directly. "I thought about why I wanted to be an architect in the first place. I studied your Portland building for a semester in school. The load distribution on the eastern facade, my professor said it was the most elegant structural solution he'd seen in 20 years. She paused. "Someone who built that deserves to have their name on it." The room held that for a moment. Briggs picked up the USB drive. "This is everything." "Everything," Rachel said. "Original files, metadata logs, the comparison analysis I ran. It's all there." Briggs looked at me. "This is the corroborating evidence we needed." I looked at Rachel Torres, this 27-year-old, who had carried a secret for 8 months out of fear, and then carried it to this room out of something else entirely. "Thank you," I said. She nodded. Then quietly, "Does this help?" "Yes," Briggs said. "This changes everything." I turned around. He was younger than Marcus, early 30s, work jacket, the kind of hands that belong to someone who used them for a living. He looked like he'd driven in from somewhere else entirely. Gerald stood quietly. "I'll give you a minute." The young man walked over as Gerald stepped outside. He stopped at the table and didn't sit immediately. "Mr. Stokes," he said. "Yes." "My name is Danny Vane. Marcus is my brother." He said it straight, no apology, no aggression. Just a fact placed on the table. "I'm not here to defend him. I want you to know that before anything else." "Sit down, Danny." He sat. Folded his jacket over the chair with the careful movements of someone who'd grown up taking care of his things. "I'm an electrician. Peoria." He looked at his hands. "I don't understand the legal details, but I saw Marcus's name in the Tribune piece online this morning, and I needed to find you." "Why?" I asked. "Because Marcus talked about you. Before all this, when he was still in law school, before he made partner." Danny looked up. "He used to show me photographs of your buildings. Explain things about them, the angles, the way the light worked. I didn't understand it. But he did. He paused. He admired you, Mr. Stokes. Whatever he did after he didn't start out hating you. The coffee shop was quiet. Why does that matter to you? I asked. Because he wasn't born the person he became. Danny's voice was steady, but strained. The voice of someone who had been carrying this for a long time. I don't know when it changed. I don't know what he got scared of. But somewhere between law school and making partner, he shook his head. He's not who I grew up with. You wanted me to know he was human once, I said. Yeah. He looked at me directly. I guess that's it. I thought about Helen. They're not bad because they want to be. They're bad because they're afraid. I appreciate you coming, I said. Danny stood, picked up his jacket. Whatever happens tonight, I'm sorry. For all of it. He walked out without looking back. I sat alone with 2 cold coffees. The fragment of humanity Danny had handed me didn't change what Marcus had done. But it changed something else. The shape of my anger, maybe. Not smaller. Just more precise. Gerald came back in and sat down. Ready, I said. No, Gerald said. But I'll be there anyway. The house looked different at night. Candles in the windows. The front path shoveled clean. A wreath on the door that hadn't been there in November. Someone had worked hard to make this look like a home that welcomed people. I rang the bell. Marcus opened the door with a smile that arrived exactly on time, warm, broad. The practiced ease of a man who had spent 15 years in rooms where first impressions were currency. Dad? He extended his hand. So glad you came. Come in, come in. I shook his hand. His grip was firm. Mine was firmer. The table was set with the good china. Candles. A bottle of wine already breathing on the counter. Claire came in from the kitchen. She was wearing the blue dress she'd worn to Helen's funeral, which I didn't think was accidental, though I couldn't have said why. She hugged me. Her arms held on a half-second longer than they needed to. I'm glad you're here, Dad, she said quietly. Into my shoulder, not the room. Me too, I said. We sat. Marcus poured wine. I covered my glass. Water's fine. A flicker, brief, almost imperceptible, crossed Marcus's face. Then the smile returned. Of course. He led the conversation through dinner with the smooth efficiency of a man running a deposition. Family memories. A story about a renovation they were planning. A question about whether I'd considered moving back to the north side. Each topic relaxed, each transition seamless. He was very good at this. Claire ate quietly, spoke when spoken to, laughed at the right moments. But twice, just twice, I caught her looking at me with something that wasn't performance. Something that was trying to tell me a thing her mouth wasn't saying. I looked back. Didn't hold it long. You know, Marcus said, refilling his own glass. I've been thinking about clearing up those last administrative loose ends from the studio transition. Just to give everyone closure. He said it the way people say things they've been building toward all evening casually, like it had just occurred to him. There's actually a document Carl Briggs reviewed that just needs your signature. Final disbursement authorization. Completely routine. He smiled. I have it here if you want to just knock it out tonight. Save everyone time. Carl Briggs. He'd used that name again the same way he'd used it at the kitchen table in 2022. Carl already reviewed it. The same move, the same smile, the same casual certainty that I would believe him because family didn't lie. I set my fork down. Sure, I said. Let me see it. Before I reveal what happened at that dinner table, comment, ready if you want to see how this ends. Because what came next, nobody in that room saw it coming. A reminder, parts of this story include fictional elements shaped to carry a deeper truth. If that's not for you, it's completely okay to step away here and find something that fits you better. Marcus set the folder on the table with the confidence of a man who had already won. I opened it, read the first page, then I closed it. This isn't a disbursement authorization, I said. It's essentially the same thing. It's a final IP transfer confirmation. I kept my voice level. It transfers irrevocable ownership of the Portland, Denver, and Austin designs to Al Rashid Holdings through your Delaware entity. Signing this completes the sale. I set the folder down. That's not routine, Marcus. That's the whole thing. The smile didn't leave his face immediately. It faded slowly the way light fades when a cloud moves over it gradually, then completely. Dad, don't. I reached into my jacket and placed my own folder on the table. I have something for you to look at first. I opened it. The first page, the email chain between Marcus and Al Rashid Holdings. September 2025. His own words, the original rights holder is experiencing financial difficulty as planned. Marcus looked at the page, said nothing. The second page, the contract comparison. Rachel Torres had prepared the original February document and the altered March version with the 4 fraudulent paragraphs highlighted. Metadata timestamps showing modification at 11:47 p.m., less than 12 hours before I signed. Claire leaned forward slightly, reading. The third page, the Illinois State Bar formal inquiry notice. Marcus's name, the case number, the date opened August 14, 2025. The bar investigation is public record as of this week, I said. Al Rashid's legal team will have seen it by now. They may have already started pulling back. I looked at him directly. And tomorrow morning, Carl Briggs is filing a civil complaint in Cook County fraudulent assignment IP theft civil fraud. The moment it hits the docket, it becomes discoverable. Every serious investor walks away from a disputed asset. Marcus's jaw tightened. You don't have standing to. I have the original contract, I said. I have metadata proving it was altered the night before I signed. I have a witness who found both versions on the studio server. I paused. And I have a sworn statement from Gerald Calloway describing in detail how you used accounting records from 2011 to coerce his cooperation. The color left Marcus's face, complete, total. The practiced composure of 15 years in courtrooms gone. Marcus? Claire's voice was quiet. She was looking at her husband, not at me. Is this true? He didn't answer her. Marcus. Her voice was harder now. Look at me. He looked at her. And in that look, in the half-second before he found the right expression to put on, I saw it. The calculation, even now, even here at his own dinner table with his wife asking him a direct question. Claire saw it too. I watched her face change. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Marcus recovered first. He always recovered first. That was his particular skill, the ability to find footing when the ground shifted. This is all circumstantial, he said. His voice had changed to the warmth gone, replaced by something more familiar from courtrooms. Controlled, professional. A metadata timestamp proves nothing about intent. Gerald Calloway is a compromised witness with his own legal exposure. And the bar inquiry is... Marcus? Claire said his name like she was setting something down. Carefully. Finally. He stopped. She looked at her husband for a long moment. Then she looked at me, and this time she didn't look away. Dad, she said, I'm sorry. 2 words. But the way she said them, not the performed apology of someone managing a situation, but the raw, unsteady sound of someone stepping out from behind something they'd been hiding behind for a long time. I looked at my daughter, 36 years old. The same eyes as her mother. The same line her lips made when she was ashamed of something, the line I'd known since she was 8 years old and had broken a window and tried to blame the neighbor's dog. I know, I said quietly. I stood up, picked up my folder, put on my jacket slowly, deliberately, the way you move when you want every action to be intentional. You can't just... Marcus started. I'm not asking permission, I said. I didn't raise my voice. There was no need for volume. This conversation is over. The legal process begins tomorrow morning. Everything after that goes through Carl Briggs. I turned to Marcus directly, looked at him the way I used to look at a structural calculation. I'd found an error, and not with anger, but with the clear-eyed recognition of something that didn't hold. "You're a talented man," I said. "You could have built something real. You chose this instead." I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. "I'm sorry that's who you decided to be." He said nothing. I walked to the door. Behind me, Claire's voice low and unsteady. "Marcus, I need you to leave tonight." I stopped with my hand on the door. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. Some things you don't need to see to know they're happening. "Dad." Claire's voice again. Closer, she'd stood up. "I know it's not enough. I know I waited too long. But I need you to know I'm done waiting." I opened the door. Cold air. The city indifferent and continuing. "Call me tomorrow," I said, without turning around. I stepped outside and pulled the door shut behind me. Not a slam. Just a door closing at the end of something. I walked to the Volvo, the first car I'd bought with my own money in years. Got in. Started the engine. Sat for a moment in the dark and the quiet. Then I drove. I was on Lakeshore Drive when the phone rang, 15 minutes after leaving Lincoln Square. Tu et nye, Jenkinse. Lake Michigan, Ophia Benfai Den Varong Valain. I looked at the screen. Claire. I pulled over. Not because I needed to, because this was the kind of call you didn't take while moving. I put the car in park and sat in the dark with the engine running and her name on the screen. I answered. Silence for a moment. Then her voice, and it was different from every version of her voice I'd heard in the last 2 years. No performance. No careful phrasing. Just Claire, unsteady and real. "Dad," I called Carl Briggs. I didn't speak. I sent him everything I have. Screenshots, dates, the messages from August. All of it. A pause. He said it's enough to be admitted as corroborating evidence. He said it strengthens the case significantly. "When did you call him?" I asked. 20 minutes ago. Right after you left." Another pause, shorter. "Marcus is packing a bag. I told him I needed him to go." I looked out at the lake. Black water. White snow on the embankment. "Claire," I said, "I know I waited too long." Her voice cracked just slightly, just once. She pulled it back. "I know that. I knew it in June 2023 when he told me. I knew it every time you called, and I didn't say anything. I knew it when I asked you about the paperwork, because he told me to." A breath. I kept telling myself I was protecting something. I don't know what I thought I was protecting anymore. "You were scared," I said. "That's not an excuse." "No," I agreed. "It isn't, but it's true." Silence. "Are you okay?" I asked. A short, broken sound that was almost a laugh. "No, but I think I will be." She paused. "Are you?" I thought about the last 6 weeks. The parking lot. The $43. Leonard's library. The foundation with Helen's name. Rachel Torres and her USB drive and 8 months of fear. Gerald Calloway and his coffee going cold. Danny Vane and his work jacket, and his brother, who used to be someone different. "Yes," I said, "I think I am." "Dad," she stopped. "You don't have to say it tonight," I said. "I want to." A breath. "I'm sorry. I'm genuinely, completely sorry. Not because the case needs me to be. Because you're my father, and I failed you, and I have to live with that." Her voice was steady now, the steadiness of someone who had made a decision and was standing behind it. "I can't undo it. But I'm done letting it define what I do next." I sat with that for a moment. "Thank you," I said. 2 words. The same 2 words I'd said to Leonard in that library in Lake Bluff. They carried the same weight now. "Call me tomorrow," she said. "Yes," I said, "I will." I ended the call. Sat in the dark. Outside, snow fell on the lake without preference or judgment, covering everything evenly the way snow does. I put the car in drive. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I was not driving away from something. I was driving towards something. I just hadn't decided yet exactly what. The hallway smelled like marble and old paper. Briggs walked beside me, briefcase in hand. The particular focused stillness of a man who had filed hundreds of complaints in this building and never once treated it like routine. 3 sources, he said without looking at me. Recapping, focused. The Al-Rashid emails, Marcus's own words establishing premeditation and knowledge of true asset value. The contract comparison from Rachel Torres metadata, confirming fraudulent alteration less than 12 hours before signing. And Gerald Calloway's sworn statement, direct witness testimony of coercion. He paused. Claire's screenshots have been added as Exhibit D, corroborating evidence of the defendant's awareness of the transfer's true nature. Is it enough? I asked. It's the strongest civil fraud filing I've prepared in 22 years of practice. He said it without pride, just the flat assessment of a man who had spent 2 decades knowing the difference between strong and weak. Marcus's attorneys will file a motion to dismiss within 10 days. They'll argue lack of standing claim. The original signing was voluntary challenge Rachel's metadata analysis. He looked at me. They won't succeed, but they'll try. We reached the clerk's window. Briggs set the complaint on the counter, 47 pages, tabbed, organized with the precision of someone who understood that presentation was its own form of argument. The clerk took it without comment, stamped the cover page, and entered it into the system. Case number assigned. Timestamp 10:14 a.m., December 12, 2025. It was done. I stood in that hallway and felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph, not relief, exactly. Something quieter. The particular feeling of a weight that has been carried so long you'd forgotten it wasn't part of you finally set down in the right place. Gerald was waiting outside on the steps. He'd filed his sworn statement separately that morning, his own attorney beside him, a process that had taken courage I hadn't asked him to find, but was grateful he had. He looked at me when I came out. Done. Done, I said. He nodded slowly, looked out at the street. I should have done this 2 years ago. Yes, I said, but you did it now. He looked at me, searching for something in my face. Judgment, maybe, or the absence of it. We built good things, he said quietly. Didn't we? We built excellent things, I said. That part nobody can take back. My phone buzzed. Briggs looked at his simultaneously. Al-Rashid, he said, reading his screen. Their legal team just contacted Marcus's firm requesting a formal status update on the IP ownership dispute. He looked up. The complaint hit the public docket 4 minutes ago. They already found it. How long before they pull out? I asked. 48 hours, Briggs said. Maybe less. I put my phone in my pocket. 48 hours. The end of a 5-year plan measured in 2 days. I thought about a kitchen table in March 2022, and a pen placed in my hand, and a smile that had cost me everything. Then I thought about a dying man in a library in Lake Bluff, and a foundation with Helen's name on it, and a junior architect who had carried a USB drive through 8 months of fear. Some things it turned out couldn't be planned for. The email arrived at 8:47 a.m. I read it twice. Then I set the laptop down and sat very still for a moment, the way you sit when something you've been bracing for finally lands and turns out to weigh exactly what you thought it would. Briggs had written 4 paragraphs. Clean, factual, no editorializing. Al-Rashid Holdings had formally withdrawn from the transaction on December 14th, 1 day before Marcus's deadline. Their legal team had cited unresolved ownership disputes and active civil litigation as grounds for withdrawal. The $94 million deal was dead. Formally, permanently, irrevocably. The second paragraph, the Illinois State Bar had issued a formal public notice that morning. Marcus Vane's law license was suspended pending the outcome of the misconduct investigation. Effective immediately. The notice was on the bar's public website. His name, the case number, the suspension date, all public record. The third paragraph, Vane and Alderton Law Group, had issued a statement. Marcus was on indefinite unpaid leave. The firm's managing partner had personally called Briggs the previous evening to confirm they were cooperating fully with both the bar investigation and our civil complaint. The fourth paragraph was one sentence: the 5-year plan is over. I closed the laptop. Outside the window, December 15th. The day Marcus had built everything toward. The day Al-Rashid was supposed to wire $94 million into a Delaware account in exchange for 3 designs that had taken me the better part of a decade to create. Instead, nothing. Silence. A public record with his name on it. I thought about the kitchen table in March 2022. The pen. The smile. Carl already reviewed it. You trust Carl, don't you? 5 years of careful architecture, not the kind built from steel and glass, but the kind built from calculated trust and manufactured desperation. It had taken one junior architect, one old partner, one dying billionaire, and $43 to bring it down. My phone rang. Gerald, I saw the bar notice, he said. His voice was different, lighter. The voice of a man setting down a weight he'd carried for 2.5 years. It's real. It's real, I said, a long pause. What happens now to the studio? That's up to you, I said. It was always yours as much as mine. More maybe these last few years. I paused. But if you want my opinion, rebuild it. Put both our names back on the door. Do the work we should have been doing. Gerald was quiet for a moment. You'd still want your name on it after everything. It was always my name, I said. I just stopped fighting for it for a while. Another pause. Longer this time. Robert, Gerald said. I'm sorry, for all of it. For every day I didn't. I know, I said. I know you are. My phone buzzed with the second call. I looked at the screen. Claire, I have to take this, I said. Let's talk this week. Yes, Gerald said. Let's. I switched calls. Dad? Her voice was different from Wednesday night. Wednesday had been raw, the sound of someone stepping out from behind a wall they'd built themselves. This was quieter, more settled. The voice of someone who had made a decision and slept on it and woken up still holding it. I saw the bar notice this morning, she said. So did I. A pause. He left Thursday, packed 2 bags and went to his brother's in Peoria. She said it without drama, just the flat recounting of a fact. He called once yesterday. I didn't answer. I didn't say anything. I've been sitting with a lot this weekend, she continued. About June 2023. About the years before that. About all the moments I had where I could have said something and chose not to. She paused. I don't want to make excuses. I had reasons. But reasons and excuses start to look the same after a while, and I'm tired of not being able to tell the difference. Claire, let me finish. Her voice was firm, not sharp, just certain. I failed you. Not because Marcus manipulated me, he did, but that's his part to carry. I failed you because when I found out, I chose comfort over honesty. My comfort, not yours. A breath. You were sleeping in your car, Dad, and I knew something that might have helped you, and I didn't say it. The words landed with the particular weight of truth that doesn't ask for a response, just acknowledgement. I know, I said. I'm not asking you to forgive me today, she said. I'm not asking you to pretend this is resolved or that we're fine. She stopped. I wanted to say it clearly. Without lawyers present, without evidence, without any of it. Just me telling you that I know what I did, and I'm sorry, and I understand if it takes time. I looked out the window. December 15th. The day that was supposed to end very differently for everyone. It will take time, I said honestly. I know. But Claire, I paused, choosing carefully. You sent those screenshots to Leonard. You called Briggs on Wednesday night. You told Marcus to leave. I let that sit for a moment. That matters. It doesn't erase the 2 years, but it matters. A silence that was different from the silences between us for the last 2 years. This one didn't have anything hidden in it. Can I ask you something? She said. Yes. The foundation. With Mom's name. Her voice shifted slightly softer. Dorothea told me about it when she called last week. A pause. Did you know Leonard was going to do that? No, I said. He surprised me. She would have liked him, Claire said quietly. Yes, I said. She would have. Another silence. Warm this time. Not today, I said finally, but not never. Okay, she said. I'll wait. She was already there when I arrived. Rachel Torres, 27 years old, junior architect. The woman who had carried a USB drive through 8 months of fear and walked into a law office on the 18th floor because she remembered why she'd wanted to be an architect in the first place. She stood when she saw me. Nervous, the same nervous as the first time, but different underneath it. The nervousness of someone who had already done the hard thing and was now standing on the other side of it. Mr. Stokes. She extended her hand. I saw the bar notice yesterday and the Al-Rashid withdrawal. She paused. Is it really over? The transaction is over, I said. The civil case will take time, but yes, the part that needed to stop has stopped. We sat. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. I wanted to thank you, I said. What you did took real courage. You had everything to lose and nothing guaranteed in return. She shook her head slightly. I had the right thing to do. That's not the same as courage. It is exactly the same thing, I said. She looked at her coffee. What happens now for you, I mean? That's actually why I wanted to meet. I opened the folder I'd brought the foundation charter, the preliminary structure, the endowment figures Leonard had established. I set it on the table in front of her. The Helen Stokes Foundation for Community Architecture. $90 million in dedicated endowment. The mission is to provide professional training and mentorship to young architects from underfunded communities, people who have the talent but not the access. Rachel read the first page carefully, then looked up. This is real, she said. It's real. Leonard Ashford established it as part of his estate. It's been legally constituted since November. I paused. It needs someone to run it. Not the financial management that's handled separately, but the program itself. The curriculum, the mentorship network, the relationships with universities and firms. I looked at her directly. I'd like you to consider it. She stared at me. I'm 27, she said. I know how old you are. I'm a junior architect. I've never run anything larger than a project team. Leonard Ashford started building a billion-dollar company at 58 with no prior business history, I said. Age is not the variable I'm optimizing for. She looked back at the charter. Wrote another paragraph. Her finger traced the mission statement slowly. Why me? She asked quietly. Because you found those files and kept them safe for 8 months, when it would have been easier to delete them and say nothing. I paused. And because you told me you studied my Portland building for a semester. Someone who understands why that building works, why the load distribution on the eastern facade matters, understands what this foundation is trying to do. Rachel looked up. Her eyes were bright, not tears exactly, but close. Can I think about it? She asked. Take the week, I said. But Rachel, I waited until she was looking at me directly. You already know the answer. You've known it since you walked into Briggs's office. She looked at the charter again. Then she smiled, the smile of someone who has just recognized something true about themselves. Yeah, she said quietly. I think I do. The gate opened before I pressed anything. Dorothea was watching. She always was. She met me at the entrance and led me to the second-floor conference room. 3 senior managers were already seated, people who had been running Ashford Capital quietly, while Leonard ran everything else. They stood when I walked in. Dorothea introduced them efficiently. Names, roles, tenure. Then she opened her folder. Leonard structured this transition 18 months ago, she said. The existing management team continues operations for a minimum of 24 months. Lakeview Partners, an independent asset management firm, handles all investment decisions during that period. Your role is strategic oversight only. Major decisions, nothing operational. He made it manageable, I said. He made it deliberate. She didn't look up from the folder. Leonard didn't do things by accident. The briefing took 40 minutes. By the end, I understood what Leonard had actually done. He hadn't handed me a company. He had handed me a structure that would run itself while I learned what I needed to learn. He had thought, as he always did, 18 steps ahead. When the managers filed out, Dorothea stayed. She reached into her jacket and placed a small envelope on the table. He left this with me personally, she said, with instructions to give it to you after everything was settled. I opened it. Inside a small card. Old paper, slightly yellowed ink, faded but legible. My own handwriting. 4 words. I hope he's okay. The note card from Loyola Medical Center. The one I'd left on the nurse's station counter on the night of November 17th, 2015, before walking out into the dark. The one Eleanor Taft had kept in her locker for 7 years. The one that had led a private investigator to a thumbprint, and a thumbprint to a DMV record, and a DMV record to a parking lot on Elston Avenue 10 years later. 4 words I had written without thinking and forgotten completely. I held the card for a long moment. He kept it, I said, from the day he found it. Dorothea's voice was steady. He told me it was the most important document he owned, more than any contract or deed. She paused. He said it was proof that people like you still existed. I folded the card carefully and put it in my shirt pocket, against my chest. Thank you, I said, for everything you did for him, and for me. She nodded once. He would say the thanks belonged to you. I walked out into the December cold. Behind me, the gate closed quietly. Ahead, the drive back to Chicago, to a new office, to a foundation with Helen's name on it, to a daughter who was waiting to work that still needed doing. I drove south. The lake ran alongside me the whole way, gray, vast, indifferent to everything I'd been through. I found that comforting somehow. I bought the house on the 20th. Small by any reasonable measure, 3 rooms, a narrow porch facing the water, a kitchen that needed work. I paid cash. No negotiation, no mortgage, no one to co-sign anything. I handed over a check and received a key and stood in the empty living room for 10 minutes, just breathing the air of a space that belonged entirely to me. Helen's photograph was the first thing I unpacked. I set it on the windowsill facing the lake. She looked the same as she always did, laughing mid-bite, completely herself. I told her about the house, about the foundation, about Rachel Torres and Gerald Calloway, and a dying man in a library who had kept a note card for 10 years. She would have had things to say about all of it. She always did. Christmas afternoon, I sat on the porch with a blanket and a cup of tea, and the first draft of the foundation's curriculum on the table beside me. The lake was gray and still. A neighbor from 3 houses down, retired 70s. The slow, careful walk of someone who had earned his pace stopped at the edge of my property. New here, he called. As of 5 days ago, I said. Retired. I thought about that. Architect, I said. Mostly retired. He nodded approvingly. Good profession. You can see the work. He raised a hand and kept walking. I watched him go. You can see the work. 38 years, and nobody had ever put it quite that simply or quite that correctly. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from a number I didn't recognize, a 312 area code, Chicago. This is Nurse Eleanor Taft. I worked the donor intake desk at Loyola University Medical Center the night of November 17th, 2015. I saw your name in the Tribune coverage last week. I wanted to reach out. I sat up straighter. I've thought about that night many times over the years. You were the only donor who stopped before leaving to ask about the patient. Everyone else just signed out and went home, which is completely understandable. It was midnight, but you stopped. I read it slowly. I don't know if it matters to know this, but the patient made it through surgery. And I kept your note card because it reminded me why the work matters on the nights when it's hard to remember. I hope life has been good to you, Mr. Stokes. I read the message 3 times. Then I looked out at the lake for a long time without moving. Well, Helen said, there it is. Yeah, I said quietly. There it is. I picked up the foundation curriculum and started reading. There was work to do. There was always work to do. That at least had never changed. And for the first time in a very long time, I was glad of it. Rachel had found the space herself. A converted warehouse on the near north side, raw concrete walls, north-facing skylights. The kind of industrial bones that a certain kind of architect looks at and sees possibility instead of problem. She'd negotiated a 6-month lease, furnished it with second-hand drafting tables and good lighting, and hung 3 large prints on the eastern wall. I recognized them immediately when I walked in. The Portland Cultural Center, the Denver Bridge, the Austin Museum. My 3 buildings printed large framed, simply hanging in a room full of people who were about to learn what made them work. Rachel was at the front arranging materials. She looked up when I entered. 6 students, she said, all accepted through the Community College Partnership, ages 19 to 24. 2 are the first in their families to pursue a professional degree. She paused. They don't know who you are. I didn't tell them. I thought you should decide how to introduce yourself. Good call, I said. The students filed in at 9 sharp. 6 of them young, quiet, the particular alertness of people who understood that an opportunity had been given and intended to use it. They took their seats and looked at me with the careful attention of people who had learned not to assume anything came for free. I stood at the front of the room and looked at them for a moment. My name is Robert Stokes, I said. I'm an architect. I've been practicing for 38 years, and I'm going to be honest with you, the last 2 of those years were not my best. A few of them smiled slightly. But I'm here now, and so are you, and that's what matters. I walked to the eastern wall and pointed to the Portland building. I designed this in 2007. It took 2 years to build and 4 years before that to get approved. I moved to the Denver Bridge. This one nearly didn't get built because the original contractor said the primary load distribution was structurally impossible. I looked back at them. It's been standing for 16 years. A young woman in the front row, 19, maybe 20, the kind of focused attention that reminded me of Helen, raised her hand. Why did the contractor say it was impossible? She asked. Because he'd never seen it done that way before, I said. Which is different from impossible. The 2 get confused a lot in this profession. Your job, one of your most important jobs, is to know the difference. She wrote something down. I pulled up a chair and sat in front of them, not behind a podium, not at a distance. I want to start with a question, I said. Not about technique or structure or materials, a simpler one. I looked around the room. Why do you want to build things? Silence for a moment. Then the young woman in the front row looked up from her notes. Because buildings stay, she said quietly. People leave. Buildings stay. I looked at her for a moment. Yes, I said. That's exactly right. The sun was going down over the lake. I sat with a cup of tea and Helen's photograph and watched the light change orange first, then deep amber, then the particular shade of purple that only exists for about 4 minutes on clear winter evenings before the dark takes over completely. My phone was on the table. I hadn't checked it in 2 hours. I thought about the year ending. Not the whole year, just the last 2 months of it. The parking lot. The $43. The library in Lake Bluff. And a man with sharp eyes and 6 weeks left to live. The note card. The foundation. Rachel Torres and her USB drive, and a student who said people leave buildings stay, like she'd been carrying that thought for years and finally found the room to say it out loud. Quite a November, Helen said. Quite a November, I agreed. The phone buzzed. Claire. Dad. I filed the divorce papers this morning. Final. I'm okay. Actually, okay, not just saying it. A pause in the message thread. Then, Happy New Year. I love you. I typed back slowly, one letter at a time. I love you too. Call me this week. 3 dots appeared. Then I will. I set the phone down. The lake had gone dark now, just the faint line of the horizon, where the water met the sky, and far to the south, the lights of the city reflecting upward into the low clouds. Somewhere out there, the Meridian Cultural Center was standing exactly as I had designed it. The load-bearing arches, the curved glass facade, the entrance canopy that directed rainwater 12 inches from the door. My name was not on it yet. Briggs said the civil case would take a year, possibly 2. The IP attribution would be disputed, negotiated, eventually resolved. He was confident. I had learned to trust his confidence because it was not the performed kind. It was the kind that came from knowing exactly what the evidence said and exactly what the law required. In the meantime, the work existed. The building stood. 6 students in a converted warehouse on the near north side were learning why the load distribution on the eastern facade of a Portland building mattered, and a woman named Rachel Torres was building something that would still be running long after both of us had stopped. That was enough. More than enough. Fireworks started somewhere to the south, distant, muffled by distance and cold air. I watched the faint color bloom above the city and disappear. I picked up Helen's photograph. I didn't know, I said quietly, that the night I drove to that hospital was the night I started building all of this. I wasn't thinking about any of this. I stopped. I was just doing what you told me to do. The lake was very still. I thought about what I would tell those 6 students next week. Not about technique or structure, but about the thing underneath all of it. The reason any of it mattered. I thought I finally knew what to say. Good, Helen said. It's about time. The new year arrived quietly, the way the best things do, without announcement, without ceremony, without asking permission. I was ready for it. Someone asked me, "What did you learn from all of this?" I'll be honest. I trusted blindly, because I believed family was the safest place in the world. I was wrong. Don't be like me, never sign anything without independent legal counsel, even when the person handing you the pen calls you Dad. Trust is a virtue, but blindness is a vulnerability. I confused the two for 5 years. I also believe, and I say this having counted $43 alone in the dark at 64 years old, that God never lets suffering go to waste. He simply doesn't always explain the timeline. One November night in 2015, I donated blood to a stranger and drove home thinking it was over. 10 years later, that single act changed everything. I don't believe that was coincidence. My personal view, if you care to hear it, most betrayals don't arrive as enemies. They arrive as people who know exactly how you take your coffee. And true legacy is not what you build, it's what you're willing to give when you have nothing left to lose. If this story reached you, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Thank you for staying until the very last line. It means more than you know. A note: before we continue, upcoming stories on this channel contain fictional elements crafted purely for the purpose of reflection and education. If that's not what you're looking for, that's completely fine. Please find content that serves you better. But if you choose to stay, I'm glad you're here.